Hi, this is Lawrence Gowan from Styx, and you are listening to So Fucking Cool.
All right, So Fucking Cool here with Lawrence Gowan of Styx. How you doing, man?
Never better, Ramsey. How are you?
Great, man. Thanks for asking.
Good.
Now let's jump right into it, man. Let's talk about the mission.
Let's jump right in.
Now,
Happy to do that.
when recording a new album, do you shoot out for pleasing the old fans? Or are you trying to acquire new fans? I mean, what's the process of somebody who had so many hit songs and chart-chopping records?
Great question, because the process is it's multifaceted in a way. You start off honestly hoping that you can come up with something half decent. Then you are thinking that thought about, people who've been around supporting the band for like over 4 decades, and then all these new people that have come into the fold over the last couple of decades. You start thinking of them. Then you realize, we don't have to make a new record. We can still we make our living, and our focus is really on touring. We play over, usually about 120 shows a year, never less than 100 anyway. And there's no great demand that we have to make new music. There's plenty of classic stuff to go to keep us going. However, the lifeblood of a band really comes from always having something new on the agenda, and something new, something artistic and creative. And as much as we put into our live show in that regard, coming up with new music is the greatest way, really the most satisfying way for a songwriter and musician to feel that they've accomplished something. So 2 years ago, when we began this record, and it started with Tommy Shaw writing a song called Mission to Mars, and then shortly thereafter, the guy that wound up producing the record came in with kind of a half song called Locomotive. When we heard those songs, we thought these are really worthy to record. But early on in the process of fleshing out the record and starting to write more material, we kind of made a pact where we thought, if we don't love this record by the time we finish it, we don't have to put it out. Let's only put it out if we really feel that it's worthy, that it can stand alongside the legacy of records that Styx have put out over their career, and that it's something that we can stand behind, foursquare, and not feel in any way that this was the best we could come up with, kind of an attitude. So, with that in mind, after that first year of writing and doing several demo recordings, our commitment deepened. And by the time we got to Blackbird Studio in Nashville and recorded the whole album and took the painstaking decision to record it analog as if it was 1979, we were thoroughly convinced. Yeah, we did that. We were thoroughly convinced that this was a good piece of work, a strong piece, and one that we felt proud of. And I guess, when Tommy basically proclaimed a couple of months to go, he said, this feels like he felt when Grand Illusion was done. That was great, because he was there for that, and as was JY and Chuck, and they were fervently, committed to putting the record out and focusing this year on promoting it. So that's a long-winded answer to that question, but it's a pretty deep question that really does speak to the mindset of the band.
Now, for a concept album, I mean, you guys went above and beyond for research. You guys actually talked to some guys in NASA, is that right?
Yes, correct. And we spoke to them just a few nights ago, because we've made so many friends there over the course of making this record that they've been coming out to Styx shows in great number. And just 2 nights ago in Bristol, Virginia, there were about another dozen NASA people backstage and at the show, and discussing all kinds of notions where they're really digging the music for the mission. It really is about their whole endeavor on Earth. Their work, which is their passion, And yeah, we were able to kind of source them so that we didn't sound. Only JY in Styx has an actual degree in aeronautical engineering, or rocket science.
I was going to say, it doesn't hurt to have rocket science in the band, does it?
Exactly. We actually do have one, but he was not our. We didn't lean on him for that information too much. We actually just went. We had a couple of friends at NASA, and we'd call them and say, "Does this make sense?" It is the hypergolic fumes that they're blasting when they're out in space, right? In order to navigate and to kind of propel a ship. Yes, that's correct. That's what it's called. So we had a few calls like that, and managed to somehow stitch all that into a record that I think is, I'm very entertaining. I think there's a high entertainment value to this album, and that's my completely unbiased opinion. Yeah.
Now, for an album that's all about futuristic meaning, you guys went old school and did all analog. I mean, what made you want to shift away from digital and not use that at all?
Well, this is it. I mean, we've observed over the last, I'll say roughly 15 years, but I really started to notice it about 12 years ago, where younger and younger people were coming to Styx shows, and classic rock was really connecting with a younger audience, to the point where now it's no surprise that at any given night, half the audience are under 30 years of age and weren't even born when the biggest records of the classic rock era were recorded. But they're just as devoted to it as people that grew up with it. It's quite an astounding thing that we've witnessed, and obviously they've fallen in love with that sound. And we've remarked over the years, especially since making Cyclorama 14 years ago, that in order to really make a record sound like a classic rock record, you have to go through the pains and the steps and use the gear that existed in that era. And as much as we embrace and love the digital age for all of the convenience and the great tools that it's provided us with, the one thing it can't quite do is replicate perfectly what a clunky old tape machine does, and big honking machines that make noise but do fantastic compression things and great sound EQ and equalizing matter, and just what it took to kind of patch all that together, and we were smiling like kids in the studio because we could smell the oxide coming off the tape, and these things were they went beyond nostalgia. They were like, yeah, this is what we first fell in love with when we first went into a studio. It wasn't the antiseptic world that we have evolved to, but rather this kind of messy machinery that you managed to fashion into something that sounded like that. And what we heard coming back from the speakers sounded authentic. And I mean, most of us even shut our cell phones off because we thought, let's make it like it's 1979 for these hours that we're in the studio every day, and embrace the technology as it existed before the digital age. And by following that credo, we wound up where we are with a record that doesn't sound out of character sonically to the great records that Styx made in the past.
Now, touring, I've noticed that this year that some of the biggest shows that are coming out were all classic rock bands. I mean, you guys and REO Speedwagon, Foreigner and Cheap Trick. I mean, you got Metallica doing shows, Guns N' Roses. I mean, none of the new guys are out there doing what you guys are doing, 120 shows, like you said. Do you think years from now that there's ever going to be a classic rock? You know what I'm saying? I mean, does anybody have the staying power?
I do know what you're saying. I do. I think there will be. I think that when I look currently at bands around like Muse and Royal Blood and Tame Impala, I think these bands will have a devoted following in the future, and they will be part of the, if not classic rock, then neo-classic rock, I suppose you'd say. Much the same as Radiohead have, and they're a 90s band that certainly, meet the criteria for being classic in every way. I think that, and then we've got to get down to kind of musicologist type of discussion on this. And I like that because, from the years I spent at the Royal Conservatory of Music, that is part of it. You have to study the history of music and observe what it was that really connected and moved people,
right.
In various eras. Well, the last half of the 20th century is entirely the rock era. That is the giant statement. If you wanted to argue that the first half of the 20th century was entirely overwhelmed with jazz because that was the great musical discovery, the second half was rock. And in order for something to have survived for half a century and be the colossal musical statement, that means now that there's weight to it, and there's it no longer has to there's no question of its validity. So here's the corollary. Here's where we have the great part of the digital age, is that all of this information is instantly accessible. And I think that when people are looking for songs that resonate well with their lives, they don't have to just look to the present day for that, although that is, that does typify a lot, very much of where, the current mindset is. But there are songs from the past that now can be instantly accessed, and eras of music that still speak to them. So I'd say that part of what rock music brought in was the notion that electrifying a small combo could make one hell of a big noise. Okay. Prior to that, we didn't have electricity didn't exist in music really at all. Or maybe to a tiny degree where there was a guitar player in Glenn Miller's band that might have been plugged into the tiniest, Fender little tweed amp, or
right.
That little amp what's the champ, one of the most prized amps today. But the electric age of music, I think, is still ongoing. But rock is its giant statement so far. I think its secondary statement would be rap, but that's another area. So these tours that are out there that people are surprised, and we're surprised too. We're very pleasantly surprised. We don't really study demographics that intensely, but it does kind of make sense in a lot of ways. If you could see, great artists of the first half of the 20th century, if they were still touring at a great level in the 1950s, people would be flocking to those shows. Louis Armstrong emerged in the 1920s, inventing jazz. If he was touring in the 50s, I think, and there were big concerts, I think gigantic crowds would be going to see him. He's part of that great musical movement, and he was a name that rose to the top. And Styx is a name like, Genesis or Pink Floyd or Yes or Queen or, Foreigner or Cheap Trick that rose to the top in that era. And if they're still touring at the level that they are, it kind of makes a lot of sense when you think of it that people would go and see it.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and one of the great things that you have is you have generations. I mean, you have kids that are going to the shows with their parents that have been listening to you since they were kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we do have that. We noticed that that number rising. We noticed, like I said, about let's say 10 years ago. But the difference now is that there are factions, equal factions of the audience of people who are there completely unsupervised,
right?
in their 20s, generally, that are really connected to this music.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you guys got a sound that's gonna stand the test of time. I mean, your hits are always gonna be there, and everyone knows those songs. And now you're opening up was something great with the Mission. I mean, there's so many songs on there that are just fantastic.
Thank you very much for saying that. Great.
Now, one thing I want to talk to you about is you guys got a special show coming up on the 22nd where you're going to do something that no band has ever done before. Is that right?
On the 22nd?
That is the hearing aid?
The PNC? Oh, right. Yeah, is that the show that we're doing that at? Okay, I know I knew it was upcoming, but I didn't know. So that's at the PNC in... Or was it?
It's the New Jersey show, I believe.
That's it. Yeah, it is. It is. You're absolutely right. I'm trying to do it right now in my itinerary. I didn't know it was that soon. Yeah, I know, because time is a weird thing when you're on tour. It kind of compresses and expands at the same time.
Right. Yeah, man. I mean,
so it's that's right. So this is a great thing because this is where we are living in a phenomenal era right now, even if we don't know it. And even if with all the troubles that are going on, there are such advances for people with any sort of disability. There's just astounding advances going on. And yeah, for this one, for these hearing devices that can restore hearing to people who are, I don't know if they're entirely deaf, but they're certifiably deaf anyway. What a phenomenal thing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's the Oticon internet hearing aids, and I guess you're going to be able to watch the show and then hear exactly a live stream through the hearing aid. Yeah.
Please get that spelling right. Don't make me sound like I don't know what it is. I know kind of what it is, but I don't know enough of the science behind it, or even exactly what it's called. I just know it's these new hearing aids that actually I guess they must get straight into the oral nerve and connect to that and actually allow people to hear. So that's quite an emotional thing.
Oh, of course. I mean, they've never had the opportunity to see a show, some of these people, I'm assuming, and now they're getting a chance to hear your music and see something that goes along to it. It's going to be amazing. I mean, some of this will be the first time they've ever heard anything, I'm assuming, from what I'm reading here.
I think it's going to be. I think it's going to have a beautiful emotional impact on them, only because and we're probably alike. I mean, in my life, the greatest form of entertainment I've ever experienced is a great rock show. That's just
100%.
Even when I've seen Cirque du Soleil, I'm like, okay, that's second, but it's such a distant second that it's not the same thing. It doesn't last with you the way, or alter your life and the way that you look at things, the way a great rock show can do that. And so I'm hoping that these people who've never experienced that, to this degree anyway, that they finally feel that. For years, whenever we play in St. Louis, there's always a number of dates, but particularly that one, there's always a lady stand side stage and signs to the hearing impaired.
Right.
Always a great thing to see. And so they have been coming to shows for years, but they just basically get the concussive intensity and vibration of the music, and they're still getting off on it. But once you add the actual, for them to actually hear it, it's really, there's something to celebrate about the world today.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that and it's groundbreaking, I mean, you guys are opening up a door for these people that they've never had a chance to experience something like that before. Like you said, I mean, a live show
we're thrilled to be part of it.
Oh, yeah, it's got to be a great honor, for sure.
It is.
Now, one thing I want to bring up to you is you've been the frontman for Styx for 19 years now?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the recent statements from Dennis DeYoung trying to reunite the band and letting him front it once again?
Right. I heard that. I haven't seen it, but I did hear that a couple of days ago. First of all, I like to stipulate that there's no real front man to this band. I mean, I'm out front in that I grab a mic and go forward on the thrust and lead the charge, so to speak, on some songs. But Tommy Shaw sings just as many songs, and JY commands the stage from the front as often, and that's been the case, I think, all the way through the band. In addition to that, the kind of the engine that we run on now with Todd Zuckerman and Ricky Phillips, that qualifies them to be frontmen as well, because they are, they command the stage. Like everyone in this band commands the stage equally.
Right.
So I think that's part of the new paradigm that came into practice, at least since I joined the band. I can understand someone wanting to be in this band. I can really understand it, because it's a great band. So I don't. It wouldn't surprise me. But since I don't know the man personally, other than through the contributions that he made to Styx, it's really not something I should comment on. I mean, they had a great time together. They had a great era that they were together. But the band is a living, breathing thing that has continued on to this day. And I would underscore this. I would underline this. We are the culmination of everyone who's ever been in Styx. There have been 10 guys over, and we're closing in on 5 decades of existence. That's a relatively low number for a band that's been around that long and survived all those eras. So there's no diminishing the great contributions that Dennis DeYoung and John Serlewski and John Panazzo and Glenn Burtnick made to what we are today. So like I say, it doesn't really surprise me, but I don't really think about it, because I've got a bunch of shows on my schedule.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And we have a new album. That's the first time Styx has had an album on the Billboard charter, in the top 10 of the rock albums in 30 years. So I'm too focused on that right now, and on the current debate among the faithful as to where does The Mission sit in the top 5 Styx albums of all time. I love that. That's the kind of debate I love hearing at the moment, and I really can't comment on the other.
Now, why aren't you guys in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame yet, man? I mean, what is going on with that aspect? I mean, all the hits, the current resurgence with this.
That's a different thing. I think that's I guess I would say that this band would qualify.
Oh, 100%.
And then the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame would have to make their decision as to who in the band qualifies to actually be in, and who gets to sit in the audience. So, I mean, these are things that are completely out of our control. I know we Tommy and JY and I did a kind of a two-chaptered kind of press week in New York, and one in New York and one in Los Angeles earlier this year, and that question came up quite often, and each of them had great answers about it. JY, I think, just doesn't even think about it, and hasn't really. There's no preset condition. Tommy made the statement that he doesn't want to get in, but perhaps posthumously that he doesn't have to deal with it. Which is kind of a cryptic thing, but I thought that was pretty funny. And for me, I don't know what the ultimate criteria is. It seems to be a moving thing, and perhaps it should be. I enjoyed seeing Yes get in for sure last year. That was great, and I as sad as I was that Chris Squire wasn't on the stage, I thought Geddy Lee did a fantastic job of it. So I'd say, by what I've observed, I think Styx deserves to be considered for it. I just don't know exactly what the criteria is, because but it does seem to be opening up now to where bands of the progressive rock era are being more and more accepted. So I'd like to see it happen for any members of this band who've ever been in it.
Well, I mean, you guys got my vote. That's 100% for sure.
Great. Excellent.
Now, I understand this part of the tour wraps up in a couple of days, and then you guys are going to keep on going throughout October and November and September, obviously.
Yeah.
What is it like having to do those many shows per year? I mean, you guys spend a good chunk constantly touring.
Yeah. I know if you look at the calendar, it seems daunting and a task. But among the band, we discuss that we don't want to have too many days off. It really, because there's an edge to the group. There's a vitality to it that we really embrace, and to no small measure, it really enriches our lives. We don't feel like people who've been on this planet for a while. Let's just put it that way. We feel that we're in touch with the 15-year-old in us that wanted to do this so badly by doing so many shows. It's a great way to spend a good chunk of your year with, thousands of people on their feet with big smiles on their faces at the end of your day. There's something very invigorating about that, and it propels you forward. You want to keep doing this as much as you can. Quite frankly, it was the notion of having to devote the time in the studio to make the mission that was the more daunting thing, and that was the thing that we really had to embrace and make as enjoyable as we could, and it was a joy, mainly because of what we talked about earlier, us, pretending we were living in the old days.
Right.
making an album about the future in the present. That's what I like to say about the mission. It's an album made in the present, recorded as if it was the past of a story that's in the future. So it's, I guess Days of Future Past would be great, except I think another band took that title. So it's not that daunting, honestly, Ramsey. It's, first of all, we kind of travel like kings. I mean, I hate to, I don't want to make it sound to overblow it, but our tour bus is not like tour buses were in the past. Hotels are extremely accommodating to rock bands now. People generally, 99% of the people that we meet are so great, and our families and extended, people around us, they support it. They come out to shows, so it really is. It's not that daunting a task.
Well, people want to follow up. They want to know more about the band. They want to see the tour dates. They're going to go to, is it StyxWorld.com?
StyxWorld.com is the first place to go, and if you go, if through that you wind up on the Facebook page, it's got I think 1.8 million people on there. You'll find all that you can begin going down all those rabbit holes from that point on, and you'll find out things that I'm not even aware of.
Well, every day there's something new that comes out, man. It's got to be hard to follow up with all that.
So that is one thing I would say about touring is at least for me, it keeps me on the day,
Right.
We're playing tonight in Guilford, New Hampshire, and that's really what's foremost on my mind. And although we're in New York City tomorrow night, and that's a huge thing, I can't put my thoughts too much toward that yet. I stay on the day and keep the, and I think that's not a bad philosophy to have. I recently became a dog owner just in the last 3 years, and I noticed how one of the things I've learned from my dog is just how he drinks in every moment, and that's really all he thinks about. Not a whole lot about the past, other than the smells, I guess. and he doesn't really think much about the future. I don't think, anyway. I think his main plans is to get the job done as well as he can do on the day, and I'm trying to push myself toward that. You know,
Right.
I just finished my yoga thing. That's what part of my yoga exercise is all about every day, is trying to, you know, be aware of the fact that your time is escaping a little more every day, but at the same time, you know, all you have is now, as the Flaming Lips say. There's a band that I think will be around in 20 years or so, maybe 30, hopefully.
Great, man. Well, Lawrence, I appreciate your time. The Mission is available for download, and you guys actually have albums out. The actual album.
Can you believe it?
That some people might not even recognize what those are these days.
The Mission, by the way, the Mission is now in its third vinyl pressing since it came out. So that is, I mean, because when it first came out, we thought, oh man, that's a whole pile of vinyl there. It's got to go, and it's been through its second pressing and now into its third. So we're really pleased with that, and yeah, I'm thank you for all the good things you've said about it.
Well, thank you for your time, man. Album's fantastic.
Okay,
keep on going, man.
So freaking cool. I'll see you soon.